But did you know some of the foods that you might be feeding your kids are banned in other countries because of certain ingredients? So how are they allowed in the U.S.?
That is the question this video will answer. In the next few minutes, I will walk through 6 types of foods that are very common in the United States, but are not accepted the same way in Europe. These are not rare items, not things you have to go out of your way to find. These are things that may already be sitting in your soda, in your bread, in your cereal, and even in your dinner. What makes this worth talking about is not just that they are controversial elsewhere. It is that in the United States, they have become so normal that many people no longer think they need to question them. Today, I want to bring those 6 items into the light, explain how they enter your body, and show you a few very practical signs to recognize them before they become a fixed part of your kitchen. In the United States, many foods are accepted under a very different kind of logic. A lot of things stay sitting on shelves simply because they have not been forced to disappear yet. It sounds like a dry legal detail, but it actually goes straight into how people are eating every day. Because there are 2 very different ways of thinking. One way is, if it can still be sold, then let it keep selling. The other way asks a much harder question from the very beginning. Did it even need to be in the food at all? Just changing that one question makes the entire food aisle look completely different. A bottle of drink with an overly intense color. A slice of white bread that looks almost too uniform. A product that holds its structure a little too well, too perfect, too convenient. Normally people look at those things and think something very simple. If a product is made well, it should look like that. But if you take one step closer, you start to see that many things in modern food are not there to make the food better for your body. They are there to make the product easier to sell, easier to manufacture, easier to keep on shelves, or to make the buyer stop asking more questions. And that is the part that makes this worth talking about. Not because every item on today's list will immediately alarm you, but because they are so familiar. Familiar to the point that many people no longer see them as a decision. They become defaults. Soda in the fridge, cereal in the pantry, bread on the kitchen table, chicken at dinner. It just repeats quietly normally. At that point, the risk is no longer about a single ingredient. It is about something that has been in the house for so long that people stop asking how it is actually being made. The list coming up is not just about 6 items that Europe does not accept. The more important part sits somewhere else. Each one represents a different kind of compromise. Some rely on color, some rely on texture, some rely on convenience, some rely on that exact feeling of, this is probably normal anyway. And I want to start with that feeling. Number 1, chlorine-washed chicken. You walk into a grocery store stand in front of the meat section and you almost do not have to think. If you have to choose quickly, most people go with chicken. Lighter than red meat. Easy to cook, easy to eat. Hardly anyone objects. For a lot of people, this is the default safe choice for dinner. But the issue with chicken is not what you see on the tray. It is in how it is handled before it ever reaches you. In the United States, a large portion of poultry is allowed to go through a chlorinated water rinse at the end of the production chain. Put simply, instead of making sure every step before that is clean enough, the system allows a final treatment step to reduce leftover bacteria. Europe does not accept this approach. They hold a very clear position. If the process is good enough from the start, you should not need a final wash to validate everything that came before. This is not a political argument or an academic debate. It goes straight into how you eat. If you cook chicken often, you may notice a few very specific signs. When you put a piece of chicken into a hot pan, instead of searing right away, it releases quite a bit of water. The pan shifts from searing to almost simmering. Once cooked, the meat is soft but loose, mild in taste, lacking the natural depth you expect from a main protein. That is not always because you cooked it wrong. It reflects how the chicken was handled before that. I am not making a sensational claim that chlorine in meat will harm you immediately. The point sits somewhere else. You are eating a product built on a standard that other places do not want to accept. And when a food needs a fix at the end of the chain, the question is no longer, is it dangerous to eat, but what the entire system is prioritizing. Real safety or convenience and production efficiency. To me, the most important part is not a specific chemical. It is that something considered the safest choice is built in a way that other places would not even allow. And because it is so familiar, it slips into dinner very quietly. If you still eat chicken every week, you do not need to stop right away. But there is a very simple way to check. Next time you cook, pay attention to whether your pan fills with water and whether the meat holds its firmness. Just those 2 details will tell you what kind of chicken you're eating. Chicken is an example of something that looks cleaner, but is handled in a way that raises questions. But there are other foods that are much harder to notice. No complicated process behind them, no massive factory required. Sometimes just a color that looks a little too perfect from the start is enough to make people believe it is harmless. Number 2, post-fruity pebbles. Some breakfasts pass so quickly that people barely have time to think about what they just ate. You open the box, pour the cereal into a bowl, add milk, and finish it in a few minutes. Something like Fruity Pebbles is even easier because it is so familiar. Bright colors, sweetness that hits fast, crunchy from the first bite. You do not have to convince children. Adults can eat it easily too because it feels light, not heavy like granola or oatmeal. The problem is that this very light feeling hides what is working behind it. Fruity Pebbles has BHT added to preserve freshness. That sounds small, but placed inside a box of cereal eaten repeatedly throughout the week, it is not small anymore. Because at that point, the product's priority is not just taste or convenience. It is also keeping the smell, keeping the crunch, keeping that still fine like yesterday feeling for as long as possible. You can see that clearly if you pay a little attention. Open the box today or a few days later, and the smell is almost the same. The cereal meets milk and still holds its crunch in a very industrial way. The sweetness rises fast, but it drops fast too. A short while after eating, your stomach feels empty again, especially if that breakfast was only cereal. That is when the story is no longer inside the box. It is inside your body. A breakfast like that can easily create a familiar rhythm. Quick sweetness, short fullness, then wanting to eat again. Not real fullness, not steady energy. It is that feeling of having eaten in the morning, but by mid-morning you are already looking for something else. If this repeats again and again, the issue is no longer is one bowl of cereal harmful or not. The issue is that you are starting your day with something designed to stay stable on a shelf, more than to move smoothly through your body. I am not saying everyone who eats Fruity Pebbles will have a problem right away, but if you still keep this kind of cereal at home, try a very simple test. Eat one bowl like usual, then notice how long it takes before you feel hungry again or feel your energy drop. Your body often answers faster than the box does. Fruity Pebbles does not fool people with one big promise. It just makes breakfast feel too smooth, too colorful, too easy to repeat. And many times the things that can slip into every single day are the ones most worth questioning. Number 3, breads with Azodicarbonamide. There is a kind of bread you can understand without even eating it. One light squeeze is enough. It is soft, but not the softness of bread fresh from the oven. It springs back very quickly, almost immediately. Tear it open and the inside is smooth, even with no uneven spots. Leave it until the next day, even a few days later, and that feeling is almost exactly the same. Many people are so used to that they think this is what bread is supposed to be like. But if you have ever eaten simpler bread, you notice the difference right away. Real bread usually does not hold a perfect shape like that. It has thicker spots, thinner spots, softer spots, firmer spots. It changes over time. This packaged bun, meanwhile, almost does not. That is when the name Azodicarbonamide enters the story, even if you do not see it on the slice. This substance is used to make dough more obedient, to rise more evenly, hold structure better, and run more consistently on the production line. And for that very reason, Europe does not allow it in food. Not because of some instant shock where you feel it the moment you eat it, but because they do not want to keep something that exists only to make a product look better and become easier to manufacture. For the person eating it, that does not show up in words. It shows up in texture. You bite into it and it feels soft in a very rounded way with no real character. Toast it and it still stays even with no part truly drying out or crisping up the way normal bread does. After you eat it, it is just done. No firm fullness, no clear aftertaste. It feels like something made to create no friction at all, either in production or in eating. Azodicarbonamide is not a problem because it is too obviously bad. It is a problem because it is too smooth. So smooth that you eat without noticing what you are actually eating. It does not make you chew more carefully, it does not make you feel anything more, and because of that, it can easily become something repeated in meals without anyone questioning it. If you still use this kind of bun, try a simple test: squeeze it gently before eating, then notice whether it springs back too quickly. Then toast it lightly and see whether the inside texture truly changes. Just those 2 steps can help you start seeing whether you are eating bread made to look good or bread made to be eaten. When texture is adjusted this much, you are no longer eating bread in the simple sense. Number 4, buns made with potassium bromate. There is one detail that is very hard to guess if you have never heard it before. Some bread flour in the United States still uses a substance that Europe does not accept in food. It sounds technical, but it sits inside one of the most basic foods, bread. Because for many people, white bread that rises beautifully with a smooth, perfectly even crumb looks like a sign of good baking. When a loaf holds its shape, slices cleanly, and does not collapse when pressed, people usually think something simple. If it is well made, it should look like that. And that belief is exactly what keeps almost nobody asking what is behind it. In reality, to get dough to rise evenly and behave that obediently, some products still use potassium bromate. A substance that helps strengthen dough, makes it rise more consistently, and produces a whiter, more uniform crumb. But Europe does not accept keeping it in the food system. Not because of an immediate reaction after eating, but because they do not want to maintain an oxidizing agent in something that should be as simple as bread. It sits right inside the way you eat. A loaf that is too fluffy, too white, too even is often also a loaf that feels rounded in the sense that it has no real character. You bite into it and feel softness, but not the firmness of grain. After chewing, the flavor drops quickly, leaving nothing clear behind. It feels like something made to look good and be easy to eat right away, more than something meant to give you fullness and a clear sense of its ingredients. If you pay attention, breads like this often look almost identical from one loaf to another. No uneven spots, no areas that are thicker or thinner. Everything is too neat, too uniform, and that very uniformity is the sign that should make you pause for a moment. Not every beautiful loaf has a problem, but if you come across bread that is overly fluffy, overly white soft, without any grain character, there is a good chance it has been helped to become that perfect. If you still want to eat bread every day, the best solution is to move towards something a little less perfect. The crumb does not need to be pure white. The texture does not need to be too even. And if you look at the ingredient list and do not see substances like this, you are already moving in the right direction. The beauty of a loaf does not always come from skill. Many times it comes from something that other places have already decided not to keep in food. Number 5, sports drinks with BVO. There are some things you drink almost without thinking. You open the fridge, take out a bottle of orange or yellow drink, give it a light shake and drink it. Nobody stops to ask how it was made, because in most people's minds it is just citrus-flavored water. Orange. Lemon. Something very basic. And because it feels so basic, what sits behind it almost disappears. These drinks are often kept very stable in color and flavor. No separation. No graininess. No real feeling like fruit juice, but a very rounded, very uniform version. To achieve that, some products use brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, a substance that helps keep citrus flavor from separating from the rest of the bottle. The problem is that Europe does not allow BVO in food, not because it makes you feel something right after drinking it, but because they do not want to keep something that exists only to make beverages look more stable in the food system. And this is something you can feel very clearly. A citrus-colored drink like this often has a very intense color, almost unchanged from the first sip to the last. When you drink it, the lemon or orange flavor rises very fast, very clearly, but it lacks depth. It does not have the aftertaste of real fruit. No natural tartness, no change as it sits in your mouth. It feels more like a flavor than something pressed from real ingredients. That is when you realize you are no longer drinking fruit juice. You are drinking a product that has been kept visually and sensorially stable rather than made to give you an experience close to the original ingredient. If you still like drinks like this, you do not have to quit immediately. But next time you buy one, notice whether its color looks too perfect. And when you drink it, try holding it in your mouth for a few seconds to see whether the flavor changes or whether it just stays in one place and disappears. Just those two details will show you the difference. This kind of product is not selling you a more real drink. It is selling you a bottle that looks more stable. Number 6, snacks with titanium dioxide. There's a very quick reflex almost everyone has. You pick up two items, one looks slightly dull, a little uneven. The other is whiter, brighter looks cleaner. You almost do not need to think. Your hand goes to the second one, not because it tastes better, just because it looks right. Titanium dioxide sits exactly in that moment. It does not make food richer. It does not make you fuller. It simply adjusts color-making coatings, whiter, brighter, more uniform. And because it does not change taste, almost no one realizes it is there. But Europe stopped at this point. They no longer keep titanium dioxide in food because of concerns about genotoxicity. Not the kind of thing you feel immediately after eating. But for something that only exists to improve surface appearance, they do not want it moving through the food system. And when you look back at familiar products, the signs become very clear. A coating that is too perfectly white, no variation, no imperfection. It looks neat in a way that feels flawless. But when you eat it, nothing really changes except how good it looked before the bite. If you want to check it yourself, it is simple. Take a snack with a white coating, break it, or bite it in half. Look at the inside. If the outer layer feels too perfect, almost separate from the rest, that is when you should pause for a moment. Not because it is immediately dangerous, but because you are seeing something very clearly. The product was adjusted to look right before it was made to be good. It helps you choose faster. It does not give your body anything more. If you step back and look at this entire list, there is one pattern that is hard to ignore. Not every item is bad in the same way, but they all share one thing in common. They make food easier to sell, easier to store, easier to look at, before asking how simple it actually needs to be for your body. You do not need to be afraid of the grocery store, you just need to know when to pause. After going through these 6 items, one question will almost always come up. So what should I actually eat to feel at ease? I think that is a completely normal reaction. When things that feel familiar in your kitchen suddenly turn out to be more complicated than you thought, it is easy to swing from being casual to questioning everything. But I do not want you to leave this video feeling like there is nothing left in the store worth buying. I want to bring it back to something simpler, not eating perfectly, but knowing where to start looking. The first principle: the less something needs to be adjusted, the better. If a product needs artificial color to look appealing, stabilizers to keep it from separating chemicals to rise better, or a final step to fix a process that was not clean enough to begin with, that is already a sign to slow down. With foods like bread, drinks, chicken, or cereal, the better option is often not the one that sounds more premium, but the one that has been interfered with less. The second principle: do not let the front of the package decide for you too quickly. Words like organic, sprouted, natural, or even whole grain sound reassuring, but they do not cancel out everything else. The more important question is what the product was built to serve. To look better, to feel softer, to last longer on a shelf, or to stay closer to its original ingredients. Just by asking that question, you can avoid many choices that look fine but do not go very far. The third principle: trust the real feel of food more than its industrial effect. A drink that looks too neon, a slice of bread that is too white and too uniform, chicken that releases too much water in the pan, a box of cereal that holds an artificial smell too consistently. These signs do not always tell the whole story, but they are often a reason not to relax too quickly. I always think this way: if something looks too perfect, too convenient, too well behaved, it is worth asking how it was made to get there. And the last principle: you do not need to change everything in one day. Just start with the things that show up in your kitchen the most. If your home drinks soda, often start there. If you eat bread every week, look at your bread first. If chicken is the main part of many dinners, begin with chicken. Changing just a few of the most repeated items will have a much bigger impact than trying to be perfect in a single grocery trip. These are items that have been around you for so long that no one questions them anymore. After this video, you do not need to doubt everything, but you should start to question just a little the things you buy, simply because you have been buying them for years. Every time you shop is a chance to choose again. It does not have to be perfect, just a little less automatic than yesterday. Is there anything on this list already in your kitchen? Is there something you always thought was normal, but now feel like you should take a second look at? Share it in the comments. Your experience might help someone else avoid a choice they repeat every week. If this video helped you, consider sharing it and subscribing. Here we are not afraid of food. We learn how to recognize what truly belongs in our bodies.